Hello and welcome back, YouTubers. I wanted to share what I picked up today while I was Christmas shopping. I went to a place called Buybacks and they happened to have a Sega Genesis Model 1 for sale. Only 20 bucks this model. Literally, it's the cost of my dinner sometimes when I go out on dates. So I said, hey, why not? Let me reacquire my old Genesis system. Long story short, I saw it, picked it up, and bought it. So today we are reviewing the Sega Genesis Model 1, not the Model 2 or 3. Do take note that those models are significantly different and more updated. So what you see here is a Model 1 in front of you, and you also have a Model 1 controller. It's a basic controller, and when this game system came out back in the 1989, 88, it had its competition, which was Nintendo, which was basically a controller like this except for 2 buttons. Now this one is remastered to fit your fingers a little bit better, along with your hand, and that's perfectly alright. Looking back at the controller, you can kind of see that this paved the way for the model of the Xbox controller currently, and is the favored model for most gamers because it fits and contours to your hand without leaving those square imprints that the original Nintendo controller came about. So the controller is basically a D-pad with A, B, and C, a C button being something new, as well as a start but no select button. So it's basically the same controller as the Nintendo without a select button and an added C button. Here you can see that this has the same plug-in as an Atari 7800 and 2600. So if you ever wanted to play your Sega on one of those, go ahead. Or rather, Sega controller. The game cartridges were pretty basic. It came in things like this, little carts. The funniest thing though in the back, the angry video game nerd said this, is that they had these little ridges on them that were like, oh man, you know, I just can't pull my game out. Gee, I really wish I had a grip on it. Oh, thank God this game system had this grip on its cartridge so I could pull this off. And I thought that was really funny because it's so true. These grips are hilarious. But yeah, they were imprinted with Sega. Always said made in China. Or Japan rather, not China. And yeah, they had pretty interesting labels on the front of them. Here you can see Cyborg Justice, a favorite of Classic Game Room. If you ever watch that show, he loves this game, Mark does. And I decided to pick it up because it's a really fun and interesting game, to say the least. Over here we have another one. It is Arcade Classics, comes with Centipede, Missile Command, and Pong. And I'm pretty sure one other one's covered up by this 1-900 Sega Game Secrets for these arcade classics. But alas, we'll be reviewing these later. On to the main attraction. Well, of course, you have yourself the core system itself here. And you have the Sega Genesis careening logo right here to make sure you know that this is a Genesis. It says 16-bit proudly, which when this was introduced later on, the Nintendo would fire back with Super Nintendo later on in the years, and thus would begin the bit wars. 16-bit was a big thing back then because you could use more colors, more depth, and put more memory in your games, making them better, quote-unquote. Over on the left side here, we have a headphone jack, which was really nice because if your parents were sleeping, you could use this headphone jack to listen to your Genesis quietly while still hearing the game. There's also an on and off switch here, and whenever you turn it on or off, the power button would come on and off, as well as a reset button, which was really an interesting looking one because it had a little bit of grippers on it, and I'm not really sure if you can see that, but that's so odd. Why would you add a grip to the reset button? There's some aesthetic little vents supposed to be here, but back in that day there was no need to vent this system because it didn't really get that hot. On the front here you can see that the front side has 2 controller ports, and it says controller 1 and 2 if you did not know that. And it's a pretty basic system, and overall a very well designed and very sturdy system. to say the least. So let's flip it over and take a look at the back. Now here you can see a small hole, which really doesn't do much. Over here you can change it from channel 3 to channel 4. It does have an RF out as well as an AV out here, and a AC adapter. All around a pretty basic system, but the one catch was it had quote-unquote blast processing, and of course the Nintendo was only 8 bits where this one was 16. Taking a look over here at the connection style, this is one of the very older systems, so it does connect through an RF switch as the standard connection, but you can always change that around and use an AV out, which is really awesome because that's what I want to do. I'm going to get a connection and use this as an AV rather than this, so I can record off of it, of course. So you see the RF signal, this goes to the TV, and if you happen to have antenna or cable back in the day, this is where that went. So this is really the most basic connection style, and it worked really good with a VCR back in the day, and of course with cable. And of course, let's not forget power. Without power, this thing couldn't run. So we have ourselves, boy, that shook the table. Look, let's do that again. Yeah, it's heavy. This brick here weighs almost 5 pounds plus. This AC adapter, holy crapola, man. This thing is massive, it was huge, and Sega actually marketed a power strip that allowed you to plug in things sideways because this thing was so huge, it took up so much space. Boy, I remember having to unplug and plug in things all over the place because of this fat monster here. And the Super Nintendo and the NES didn't do much better on that. But later on, you'll see that the Sega 32X, the Sega CD, and of course the other Sega contraptions still carried these huge things, if not 2 more at a time. So, is the Sega worth it? Is it worth buying? Is it worth investing your hard-earned money in? Well, personally, that's a question, once again, between you and your wallet. With great games like arcade classics, you could play Centipede, Millipede, as well as Missile Command and Pong on your Sega Genesis. And if you don't want to do anything risky by buying a old 2600 or 7800, I believe, or 5200, you know, you could definitely go with one of these, get the arcade classics, and play them on a safe Sega. Because these cartridges don't have a battery backup, or most of them don't, including this one. If they didn't save, there was no battery backup. Therefore, they probably won't degrade for quite some time. These cartridges are over 20 plus years old now. Roughly, getting into the 30s here by 2020, this game system and these cartridges will be 30 years old. And they still work perfectly, I might add. Of course, there's a little wear and tear here and there. Nothing's perfect, but relatively, for being a 20-year-old system that ended up in a buybacks, this looks pretty nice. Overall, the Sega Genesis is a great buy and a great find, and you really need to realize, hey, if you got a new or old TV, what you can hook it up to, and if you can hook it up in the future. That's a big thing, guys, so you need to realize that. Once more, I really like the Sega Genesis, and I'll be doing many reviews of games like Cyborg Justice, Echo the Dolphin, Sonic the Hedgehog, but I've already reviewed those games because most of the games have been ported over, at least the good ones. But there are specific games that are still on the Sega Genesis that make it a wonderful buy and a pickup. There's at least over 600 games for this game system. There's bound to be one that appeals to you. I'm Protomario, and I'm signing out, and hey, thanks for watching this review, guys. Remember, thumbs up, it really helps to get my name out, and if you feel like donating, there's a donation link on my page. Couldn't hurt, and I could always use your donations to buy more great stuff like this.